Welcome to This Team Is Killing Us, a podcast about what the Carolina Panthers do to good people. She is Lauren Brownlow. I am Demetri Lauren. And Lauren, what is killing me today is the offseason is here. Everybody is thinking about what they do next season. And boy, does it hit you like a ton of bricks how little flexibility the Panthers have right now to be a player with any free agent they might have their eye on.
Yeah, that plus, it's also like, has this become a more desirable destination too?
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's a good question. I think that I was watching some various media things from the Super Bowl, and it seems like there is a newfound level of respect for Bryce in the league, but I wonder how much of that is like, he's great as long as I don't have to play with him. And I don't blame guys for feeling that way. I think Bryce has definitely improved, but I do think that he is just part of the package of Carolina hesitancy right now for a lot of these guys.
Well, and I think probably Tepper as much as anything.
Well, more than anything, for sure. But
Yeah.
I think that, and when I say Bryce is part of the hesitancy, I think there's real wait and see, right? Like there's real wait and see.
Canales, I'm sure there's a wait and see.
For sure. Because you look at we've talked before, they're going to need a receiver in this offseason. T. Higgins is another one of those guys that does he feel the pull to come back to the Carolinas? But, that's a dude that's going to have his choice of where he wants to go if he does, in fact, hit free agency. And because remember, I think T is from Alabama. I don't think he's actually from South Carolina.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Is that going to be enough? Is the good feelings of quote unquote home going to be enough to overcome the lack of competitiveness?
Yeah, I don't know. And then, what do they have to offer him, quite literally. And I think I told you too, like, I'm not saying I'm anti getting a receiver or free agency, but I think they have I would prioritize other spots personally. That's not to say that they don't, if they can't get one, like they shouldn't try. I'm not saying that. It's just more of a question of like, I certainly don't want them to break the bank for anybody that's not, and T. Higgins is as good. Like, listen, I'm not questioning T. Higgins. Like, that would be way better than anybody they currently have. I'm not saying that's not true, but I'm saying that I think that they did fine offensively without a T. Higgins this year. Like, they showed they had the capability to be fine, I think, for the most part. Could it be better? Sure, probably. But at the same time, they've got like so many other glaring, humongous needs on defense that I just get a little. And like you said, they don't have much flexibility as it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a bloodbath is the wrong word. But if you're Dan Morgan, you've got to come into that period of the offseason where you are cutting and restructuring with the attitude of if we can save a dime, we've got to do it because you're right in the middle of the pack right now. Let's rewind a little bit and talk about what everybody has been talking about with the Panthers this week. Let's go all the way back to the 2011 draft when CamNewton is taken number 1. First of all, Lauren, did you see this actual Travis Hunter podcast? I had no idea such a thing existed.
Me neither. Good for him, by the way. But no, I didn't see it. I read the story about what he said, so I have not seen it.
So Travis Hunter, obviously Heisman Trophy winner out of Colorado, potential to be the number 1 pick in this draft. I mean, certainly he's one of, if not the best player in this class. He played on Cam Newton's AAU team. That is the genesis of the relationship here, of how he ends up with Cam Newton on his podcast. But he asks Cam point blank, what did you learn and what was it like to come in as the number 1 pick in the league? You have probably seen going around social media the edited clip where it looks like Cam comes in and just says, hey, I went to a team full of a bunch of losers. And to be fair to Cam, 2-14, like that's an awful lot of losses. And it took an awful lot of guys to lose that many games. However, I do want to play for you the clip, not in full context, because to do that, it would be like 11 minutes long. But I do have an extended 2-minute Cam sort of explaining himself. And then let's kind of get into not only what Cam said, but the reaction to what Cam said as well.
You're the top pick because what?
The way you play.
No. You're looking at it from a personal situation. I'm talking about from the professional situation. You're the top pick because that was the worst team in the NFL the year before.
Bingo.
You see what I'm saying? So for me, it wasn't just I wanted to be the number one pick, yes, but understanding like, yo, if I'm going to the worst team, our guys in the locker room ready to win right now. What Jaden Daniels did as the number 2 pick last year, that's not normal.
Yeah, that's not normal.
You see what I'm saying? CJ Stroud, that's not normal. And those are quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
You could potentially be the first pick, but bro, you have no way of impacting the game like a quarterback does. Right. You can lock down the number 1 receiver, you can make impact plays on offense all you want, but it's still not like a quarterback. My issue is when I was the first pick, I went into a locker room of losers. Just honest, like guys didn't know how to win. Guys didn't know how to prepare. They didn't take themselves serious to realize, like, yo, we was 2-14. There was a lot of 2-14 in the mentality of those guys. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like, bro, the 3 years that I was in college, I won a national championship at the University of Florida, had to transfer, went to JUCO, won a national championship there, went to Auburn for 1 year, won a national championship there. Then I left and went to the NFL, and you're trying to put me in a 2-14 situation. Like, no, bro, I want to win yesterday. I'm here to win. I'm here to win Super Bowls. So when your intensity is like that, and you talking to a cat that's like, man, I can't wait to go to Miami.
Huh?
What? Miami? Huh? Like, what are we doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, we all, it was a culture shock for me.
So Cam has never made it a secret that he sees the world through Cam's lens, and that's the only way he is capable of seeing the world, right? And I don't think that is a productive way for you or I to go about life, but Cam Newton is Cam Newton, and he has fared mostly just fine by it. I think the wording is harsh. I don't know that I would say I completely disagree with everything he said.
Well, who is it? It's a friend of our show, mostly just because he's a friend of ours, Bomani Jones.
Yeah.
He always likes to say, like, if you are what your record says you are, kind of like if you lose a bunch of games, you're a bunch of losers. And like if you root for a team that's perennially losing a lot, like you might be a loser. He's been known to say that too, which, fair, I'll wear that. But, it's like, he said that about Falcons fandom, to be fair. But, I mean, I don't think that the Panthers are all that superior.
Yeah, we have not escaped said charges.
No. If anything, I get jealous sometimes that the Falcons lose. Like, they get more sympathy, I feel like. And, like, more, I'm like, hey, what about us? But then it's also like, well, I see it too. Okay, it's fine. But yeah, I mean, I think is it too harsh considering some of the dudes that were in that locker room to just like broad brush? But I don't even know if that's what he was saying necessarily. Like he wasn't saying everyone in that locker room is a loser. I didn't hear that. But I understand why guys do. Like I do. I understand why you're like, wait, what the hell are you talking about? And like he said in the clip, he never lost. He came in having never. I mean, Bryce is not dissimilar in that way.
I do think it is really important to say we should put a big asterisk next to that "I won a national championship at Florida" comment.
Well, yes, obviously. I just
sort
of. I was more talking like JUCO on, but yes, obviously correct. But it's like. So I get it from his perspective where it's like to him, like that's always been the thing. And like, he's been able to always make enough of a difference. And so maybe if he didn't make as much of a difference as he would have liked in his rookie season, or even throughout his time in Carolina, if we're being honest, like in terms of their win-loss record, right? Except for the year they went to the Super Bowl. Like if he didn't make the kind of difference he wanted to make, I could also see it being a situation where it's easier for him to like look back at some of the players and be like, well, they had a loser mentality or whatever. Thing, right? But
you and I have talked about that it seems like the franchise never was willing to do him any favors in terms of bringing in true difference makers, either for him to throw the ball to or along the offensive line that could create more time for him to do Cam Newton like things. I will say this. it is not hard to understand why, whether it is fans or whether it is former teammates, it's not hard to understand why people don't like Cam, even if you and I do like Cam. Like it's not hard for me to understand that,
this isn't the first time he put his foot in his mouth either, in terms of like.
So that's kind of what I was getting at. The other part of this is, as easy as it is to see where the hate comes from.
Yes.
I do look at Jesus. I do look at Steve Smith's tweet about losers. Well, how dare you? Like, these two are like exes that need to get each other's names out of their mouth. They live for the hate of each other. And honestly, it's Steve lives for the hate of Cam. Cam has never said Steve's name, but I don't think Cam doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe to a degree, for sure. I mean, they have never like shied away from taking even subtle shots at each other. Right. Sometimes subtle, like so subtle that you have to kind of know the ins and outs to know what they're talking about and be like, oh. Right. And it's weird because neither of them have like shied away from speaking their minds either necessarily, but they are somewhat careful in what they say about each other. I don't think like that is not a thing I could ever hear coming out of Smitty's mouth.
Agreed.
It's like, I'm going to Miami. Like, I'm excited to go to that's not a thing so I don't think that was about him specifically. Sometimes I think Cam just says stuff and he's like, not, honestly, like, I just think sometimes and now that he's got this media role, it's like, beforehand, they would just be like, say as little as possible. And sometimes he would say some convoluted stuff that we'd be like, is that metaphor right? And it wasn't. But he tried it, or he would say something that would make everybody go, what?
Yeah.
And then,
almost knowing the quote.
Right. But now, like, he's given opinions that sometimes have bothered people. I understand why. I think, I don't think a lot of what was said, I understand why he felt that way. I don't know, I don't know how fair or unfair it is as a characterization. You don't have the emotional attachment I do to some of the guys that were in that locker room. You know what I mean? Like Jonathan Stewart's in that locker room. Jordan Gross is in that locker room. Jeff Schwartz, Ryan Khalil, like none of those guys are losers. John Beeson, like, I'm looking down the list. Chris Gamble, like these guys were, and Captain Munnerlyn, not right away, buddy. So calm down. Although I loved a lot of what he said, to be honest. And obviously we said Steve Smith, like, although you want to hear this wide receiver list? Boy, oh boy. Okay.
Was it a preview of things to come?
David Clowney, Armonte Edwards, please help me. David Geddes, and Brandon LaFell and Steve Smith. Like, if I was Steve Smith too, I'd be like, who's a loser? What did Captain Munnerlyn call Jimmy Clausen the year before too? Captain Checkdown, which made me literally spit my drink out. Like, I was just like, Captain.
So it's funny. This makes me think of the NBA, and we've heard a lot, obviously, about the Luka Doncic trade to the Lakers. And one of the things that has come up a lot is Brian Windhorst was really, really critical of Luka during the NBA Finals last year.
Yeah.
And I think it was Bomani that said basically he called him a loser without using the word loser. And that clip has come up a lot because Windhorst has said, nobody in the Mavericks organization reached out to me to say I was too harsh or that I was wrong or that I didn't understand what he did in the locker room. Like, that's the people that make the decisions. They're telling you they don't think they can win with Luka as their star, which is another way of saying he's a loser, right? And that is a very loaded term, particularly in sports. And so here's the question that I think is worth asking. And this is not so much about Cam. This might be a little bit more about Travis Hunter and the other guys in the draft that are listening to this. What message do you take from this? Because I feel like if I am Travis Hunter's people, I'm immediately telling them, you've got to put that out of your head. Like, that's not going to help you.
Yeah, and I, you know what I think too? Like, if Cam had not said losers, everything else, like no one would have cared about anything else he said. If he had not used the word losers, if he had just said he walked into a locker room of guys who didn't know how to win,
even he walked into a losing locker room, but losers sounds so personal.
Loser is like it's an insult. It's like you're calling someone a name. You are saying that who they are as a person is a loser, that they lose, that they do not win. And no athlete, especially not a Steve Smith.
I mean, it's clear why the two. Yeah, it's clear the two were never going to coexist because of.
Which I hate, by the way. I hated it.
I think the Panthers fans should hate it because, for the types of personalities, if they were aligned, the Panthers could have been the villain of the whole league, right?
Yes.
And that just was never going to happen. Real quick, we talked about this earlier in the year when Cam sort of said that, hey, I go into the facility, my picture's not up anywhere. What do you think this does with his standing with the team long term?
I mean, to be honest, like, they clearly weren't doing anything for him already. It's certainly, I don't know if anytime soon they'd be like, oh, we saw your comments about not having your picture up. I know you just called us all losers, but here you go. Like, that's not likely to, like, unless he comes out and is like, hey, what I meant by that was I'm not calling them losers. Like, that was a bad word choice.
Unless he comes out and says Cam is capable of doing?
No. I mean, maybe a little bit though, because you'd be surprised. Like, he does care what people think of him, and he does care what people around the organization think of him. It's why he engendered such affection and love from the fan base, is because they could tell, like, he didn't come in here and think he was too big for it or for us or for this area or anything. He came in and wanted to be loved and accepted. And I think, like, he does want that, and he does want to keep being the good guy that the Panthers fans champion, and they're like, why didn't you treat him better and whatever. But it's like, it's almost like he forgot a lot of his own career in saying that, I feel like, which was interesting to me. Yeah. Because, like, a lot of what Captain Munnerlyn said in a rebuttal, which was, like, very intelligent and, like, well thought out and, like, made a case, like, point by point. And I was like, including the Captain Checkdown deliciousness, which I just loved, because Jimmy Clausen, no pick has ever made me more upset. So that the Panthers have made in my lifespan, nothing.
I'll be honest with you. I thought I thought, like, oh, they're going to be good for a long time when they made it, even though
I knew they wouldn't. And by the way, I didn't care if they were. I hated his guts.
Yeah, no, that I totally agree with.
Hated his guts, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. We're not doing this. Jimmy comes in, like, trying to take people's numbers and stuff too, like, ridiculous. Whatever.
The quarterback.
But the point, I mean, I think, like, if you phrase it as don't know how to win as opposed to, like, losers, we're not having this conversation. And so maybe Cam does. Maybe someone close to Cam is like, bro, it's the losers, it's the problem. And maybe he walks that part back. I mean, who knows? But, like, the rest of it is, I mean, loser, that's a tough one, because it's like he forgot his career too, because he forgot that there's a lot of context that goes on. And you mentioned basketball, and I think, like, this goes on in basketball a lot, and it's maybe a little more fair in basketball, but not completely. And in football, it's even less fair, because yes, a quarterback can make a big difference, but it's still a team game. Like, ask Patrick Mahomes how it is to be the best in the game when you don't have the teammates around you that are as good as who they're playing against. Like, and Cam had to deal with that a lot of his career. And so I think, like, some of what Cam says, like, is a little bit missing the forest for the trees there, in terms of like, well, bro, look at your own career. And Captain even said, like, they picked in the first round, like, the top however many picks when Cam was there. I think one season he was injured, they did, and didn't play a lot of it, but the other one he wasn't. And so, like, you know, I mean, that's not saying it's all his fault again, but it's like, what do you know, if you want people to remember your career fairly, which I think he should want. Yeah. Maybe he shouldn't be so unfair and sweeping in his generalizations of Panthers that have been through some tough times. Great players, not losers, just happen to be playing with a losing a loser football team. You know what I mean? You can, I don't know if that makes full sense, but it's like, you're not necessarily, like, if you want us to remember the full context of your career and look at you fairly, you should probably be able to do the same thing for a team that you probably didn't know that much about. Why would you? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is also worth pointing out that, you know, a lot of those guys were on the 2-14 roster and the 12-4 roster from just 2 years.
100%. That's the thing. That's where it's like, I mean, not a lot, but like a good amount, you know, like Charles Johnson wasn't happy about it either. I saw that. Greg Hardy is a loser, so I'll give him that one. JJ Jansen still in the league. Hashtag long snapper.
Yeah.
But and a lot of guys went on IR that year too. Like Thomas Davis was on IR. Matt Moore, who people thought, Jeff Otah, geez Louise, a lot of linemen. Jimmy Clausen sucks as a person and a quarterback. In my opinion, but he still. I mean, you heard the list of who he was out there throwing the football to. I mean, it's amazing Steve Smith didn't kill him at any point during that year. So it's like,
Yeah, no, I hear you. Let's talk about the team that will be on the field for 2025. AdamTheilin made it clear during Super Bowl week he intends to be one of those guys on the field for the Panthers this year.
Feel good. I took 2 weeks off and got my energy back, started training already, spent a ton of time with my family, and just kind of thought about how the end of the season went, the progression, the things, the moves that the leadership in this organization are doing. I'm really excited about Bryce and what he was able to do once he got back in the game, and so excited about what the future holds for this organization. I want to be a part of it.
All right, so Lauren, he's going to be 35. What he was trying to decide was not Panthers or hit free agency. It was Panthers or retirement. So I got to ask, what do you think his goal is for one more year? I mean, to me, if you're playing one more year, I don't want.
I'm just kidding.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if you're playing one more year and you have had his career, do you really want to help develop a quarterback?
Evidently, I guess. And you know what? I'll say this for AdamTheilin. That can't hurt in terms of the Panthers looking at other free agents. Because for a guy like that's played in the league for as long as he has, to say he wants to stay here, and that's his goal, that can't hurt. I mean, people, if you look around and you're looking for a place to go and you're like, well, Thielen wants to stick around, maybe it's not so bad. I don't know.
So let's talk about that then. So how do you then build a wide receiver depth chart if Thielen is coming back? Because we agree. I mean, we talked about it at the beginning of the show. You've got to find a real number one. And I kind of wonder if you go out and you find, let's say it's T. Higgins. Hell, let's say probably more likely, let's say you pull off a trade for Deebo Samuel. Let's say that happens. Okay. And then you've got Deebo, XL, Jalen Coker, and AdamTheilin. Are you running 4 wide all the time?
I mean, yeah, maybe. Why not? Right? I mean, I that's the thing. I like the list. I like those guys. I like the young talent they have. I like, Thielen's veteran presence has been invaluable to them. So, that's why for me, I mean, again, yeah, getting a dynamic game changer could certainly take things up a notch. But I also have faith in Xavier taking another step. At least please.
Yeah.
You don't know how many sucky receivers I've seen come through that were supposed to be good. Don't hurt me, because I love your accent and I love you. And I beg every week. I'm like, oh, he's going to hurt me, isn't he? He's going to crush me. He's going to be dropsy king for the rest of his career. And I'm just going to be like, God, Xavier, why are you like this? And I've seen it. I've seen it so many times with guys that and so it's hard for me to love and let go. But, I mean, let's say he takes the step that you would expect he should or could take forward. And, Coker's been really good. I don't see any reason to think he would take a step back. And then you get Jatavian Sanders into the mix as a pass catcher, and he can really stretch the field as well. So, even if they don't get a Deebo or a T. Higgins, I genuinely, I mean, now, can they afford to get any of those guys hurt? No, and that's tough.
Right.
And maybe they find somebody the way they found a Coker or whatever, or they find someone in the draft that they like enough to, like I said, I told you too, if they have a guy that they really like in the draft and they just think the world of him as a player, I'm not going to be mad if they pick him over a position of need, as long as he's actually worth that, worth picking at that spot.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I think that given the running back situation, it's actually honestly why I kind of think, God, Deebo Samuel kind of makes, if you could get Deebo for a third round pick, that makes a ton of sense, because that'd
be great.
I mean, it would let you do the things you thought you were going to be doing this year with Jonathan Brooks, right? So that's appealing. I understand your point about even if it's not a position of need, if there's a dude you're really in love with in the draft, go get him.
I'm not saying first round or anything.
Yeah. I hear you. I think the thing that let's call them pass catchers in general, because I'm including Ja'Tavion Sanders in this, in general, has been missing is a veteran game changer. And so I don't necessarily, even if like all of the best pass rushers are off the board at pick number 8, if you don't feel like you love Malachi Starks or Will Johnson right there, I still wouldn't want to see the Panthers pounce and get the best receiver in the draft, because I don't think it fills the emotional need. Is emotional the right word? I guess the character need that is sort of missing right now in that group.
I don't think that's unfair because you have a couple young guys already. So I hear you. My only concern is like, okay, to get a veteran game changer, like that's going to cost you, and it's going to cost you a lot. And I don't know that they have, like, if you get Debo for a third, like, forget it. Like, yes, please sign me up. I'm in, because that's great. But like, I don't think, especially if you're having to sign someone off free agency or whatever, I don't know I don't think that's an option in that way. You know what I mean? But if they can trade for somebody like a Debo, then yeah, like I'd be okay with it. And listen, I hate to part with draft picks, but like when you compare what you would get in the third round versus a Debo, like it's hard to argue.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the only reason I bring up a third as a possibility is I always feel like when a team tells you to go out and find the trade, it does then sort of like it is sort of the team saying, we'll take what we can get at this point. Like either the relationship is bad, we know you're not going to resign, whatever it is, you take what you can get as long as we feel like it's fair, we'll make it happen. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility. I really don't.
Hey, I would be thrilled with that. I would feel like a theft a little bit, but
Yeah. So we're doing a new thing here at OG Triangle Media. It's called the OG Hat Vault, exclusive designs that are only available for a short period of time. We have one now featuring the Ovius and Giglio podcast logo that looks like the old ACC logo. You can get links for this all over our social media. You can get links for it in the OG Fans newsletter, but you can only get the hats until February 25th. So act now. It is the OG Hat Vault. I think we are calling this a test pilot program for now, but we have already, I think in our minds, decided it's going to be successful because we have the next few designs lined up as well. But sign up, go to ogtrianglemedia.com. That's how you become part of OG Fans, and you will get the Hat Vault ads like dropped right into your inbox every day, or find Ovius and Giglio on social media for the link. Lauren, does the name Matthew Wright ring a bell to you?
Not really.
Yeah, me neither, although apparently he played meaningful minutes for the Panthers this year when Eddie Piñero was injured. He has been signed to a real contract by the team. The place kicker has been in the league since 2020. In that time, 55 of 63 overall and 7 of 11 from beyond the 50-yard line. So sounds like the Panthers are done with Eddie Piñero.
Man, I still blame, I don't remember who did it. I wish I did. Whoever the announcer was on that game that was like, if he makes this, it'll break Graham Gano's consecutive field goal. Ever since that, missing that one, he was not right. Not right ever again.
I'm going to say Chris Myers only because it feels like he did a lot of our games and I don't like him.
That feels right.
Yeah. So Eddie Piñero is going to be an unrestricted free agent. I think that there was some question about whether or not the Panthers really wanted him back.
Look, we talked about it. When kickers lose it, it seems like
that's what I was going to say. Like, I
hate to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's hard to right now because of the news is so recent, but take the massage parlor stuff out of your mind with Justin Tuck and just think about him over the last 2 years, right? Like that was the most accurate kicker in NFL history. Yeah. And when it went, it went.
I mean, I guess some people might say it was connected, but we've seen it happen to other kickers too. It's not just him.
Sure.
It's just like Vinatieri was kind of like that, although he got it back a little bit. And look, Piñero might get it back, but like, how often have we seen a kicker that a team was like, all right, well, we'll stick with him because we really love this guy and we'll stick with him. And how often have we seen that guy get it back, like with that team? For whatever reason, it just doesn't seem like they sometimes get it back elsewhere, like Gano was similar in that, like, he got it back elsewhere.
You will remember the player's name. I don't remember his name. Who was the Florida State kicker that the Buccaneers took in the second round?
Janikowski?
No. That was long after
Janikowski. I forgot. That was right, because I was at the time married to a Buccaneers fan, and I definitely made fun of him, and now I can't remember his name. I was like, man, even the Panthers didn't do that.
I thought at the time it made some sense, only because like you were talking about a guy who in college was, I think, the most accurate kicker in ACC history, if I remember right. Maybe in college football history at that point.
He was on their national title team, and for whatever reason, his name has gone bye-bye in my brain. But yes, I know exactly who you're talking about.
And man, he got to the NFL, and it just was not clicking for the guy. And the thing that is, I think, becoming more and more apparent, especially as these kickers come out of college better and better, like there's no growing into it. I think you are less likely now to get it back with another team if you've lost it. Like, you either have it or you don't. And if there is even an inkling Eddie Piñero doesn't have it anymore, you've got to move off of him right now.
Roberto Aguayo, by the way.
I knew it started with an A. I just couldn't come up with it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that there's truth to that. I mean, for me, like, and I hate to like make it like a fantasy situation, because I know people will just roll their eyes. But at the same time, there are certain things, certain positions that you do have to draft before others, probably, and it is somewhat translatable. And you know what everyone drafts last, unless they're crazy? Kickers.
Lauren,
because like it's kind of a crapshoot, to be honest.
Yeah, so I'm glad you bring that up, because this is the thing that so when I look at a kicker to determine is he an upgrade over Eddie Piñero or not, I pay more attention to the over 50 stats than I do just general accuracy. Matthew Wright seems good. Maybe not great, but he certainly seems good. And this is the thing. This still may be the smartest thing the Panthers can do, just because I don't know in the modern NFL what the going rate is for a great kicker.
I feel like finding I don't either, but I feel like the finding a kicker feels a lot like, I mean, I'm not a gambler, but I guess some people talk about like hot tables in Vegas or whatever, and like when it cools off, you just have to go, and you just have to cut your losses, and then you find another hot table, and you're like, all right, let's ride this bad boy until the wheels fall off, and then when it cools off, you have to just get out of there.
You're right.
And I feel like kicker is like that, weirdly, where it's like, oh, this guy got the yips, gotta go. Like, it's not like you just give him one game to get the yips. Like, usually it happened. Like for Piñero, it wasn't just one game; it was like 3 or 4, and then you're like, oh boy, here we go. Yep. And sometimes like teams used to stay with kickers a little longer through things like that, and like a Tucker earned that with his play with the Ravens, which is why they stuck it out with him for maybe longer than a lot of teams would have. And then obviously the other stuff, and then it was like, well, okay. But it's like, I mean, I think it's just the weirdest thing. It's like when they get the yips, it's like they don't go, and it's so weird. The guy could be great for years and years and years, and it's like all of a sudden he can't make kicks anymore. I don't understand it, genuinely. I don't, but
Yeah. I want to wrap by talking a little bit about the Saints filling their head coaching vacancy with KellenMoore. Is this good? And when I ask that, I mean,
for whom?
Yes, exactly. Because I have seen KellenMoore be very creative and very good. And that seems to coincide with when he has a Saquon Barkley, when he has a Jalen Hurts, when he has a prime Dak Prescott and a prime Ezekiel Elliott. I've also seen him be the offensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Chargers. And I think that the situation in New Orleans is closer to that than it is the Eagles or those great Cowboy teams he was with.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think that's unfair. And I almost am willing to, like, I don't want to say excuse his tenure with the Cowboys, but, I mean, he was with some coaches that, aren't the best, has some head
Sure.
coaches, but still, yeah.
But I think he gets credit for what bringing that offense of a bunch of young guys together right away. The thing that I think is going to be good for fans of every other team in the division is that the Panthers are the Saints are in a level of cap hell that, like, I don't know how you get out of it. I really don't know how they ever get out of it.
Well, that sucks. Oh, just hate to hear that. Oh man, that sucks.
Lauren, there are only 32 of these jobs. There are only so many roster spots in the NFL. Everybody is a professional. I don't want to accuse anyone of anything.
Uh-oh.
You have the grandson of the best player in franchise history coming out in the draft next year. All I'm saying is, if you were tanking, nobody would blame you.
Hey, listen, if they want to lose every game next year, look, it'll be hard for people. It'll be hard for people not named me and others that I know that are avowed Saints haters like me in the Saints Haters Club. I will not be crying if they want to lose every single game next year, even by a lot of points, or maybe even painfully by just a few points. That would be even better, actually. Like, let's just have them lose a bunch of games by barely any points at all. That would be cool, too. No, I mean, look, do I want them to get the number one pick? Not necessarily, obviously, but, like, do I enjoy watching them lose almost every game that they lose? Yes.
Do you know they're the only franchise in the division that has not had the number one pick since, maybe since 2000. Yeah, since 2000.
Wow, that's kind of crazy. Didn't they take Aaron Brooks? Or no?
No, I mean, like, they haven't had the number one pick.
Who did they draft back then? Was it Aaron Brooks, or am I crazy?
Oh, no. I don't know who. I'm saying, like, since 2000 was the year that the Falcons traded up for the number one.
Oh.
Pick. Like, you're going back to, like, the 70s before this, or since the Saints have had the number one pick.
That's kind of crazy considering how much they sucked for a long time.
Right, considering what the 80s were. Yeah, no, I'm with you. So I'm coining the term here, mismanaged for Manning.
I mean, well, the tough part is, though, that you just hired a new head coach, right? So,
sure.
Like, I mean, I'm not saying you can't walk your way into a good pick like the Panthers almost did.
If you hire a new head coach with the understanding that you have this job for year one and then this job for every other year, like, to me, this is the ideal situation.
Yeah, I mean, as long as everyone's on the same page. But you know how it is. Like, every time we're like, oh, this team should tank, they don't. Or they certainly don't seem to be doing it on purpose. And honestly, I'd rather see them lose all their games by accident.
Well, I think that it's the only way that any of the rest of us get satisfaction. I think that it's interesting to me. The Saints are what they are. I've been thinking about this a lot since the end of the Super Bowl, thus ending the season. A conversation I had with David Cutcliffe back when he was still coaching Duke. I can't remember what quarterback it was we were talking about in the NFL. But think about David Cutcliffe's, like, reputation and track record with quarterbacks. When I say this, and you'll understand kind of why it has stuck with me for so long. He said that when he looks at NFL quarterbacks and they experience that quote unquote sophomore slump, he said it's not hard to figure out what is happening, especially for the guys like, think of a CJ Stroud that had a great rookie season and then comes back and he's not great the next year. These guys start to wonder, was the only reason I could compete here because people had not seen me before? Have I already, been figured out? And is this the reality? And he said that messes with some guys. It takes getting to another offseason for some of these guys to break out of it. I just bring that up to say, I don't know that even with all their weapons, I think Atlanta is going to be a particular threat in the division next year. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that Carolina ends up number 2 in the NFC South, in large part because the Bucs will probably win it again at 9-8.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was going to say, it's to me, it's the Bucs, and then everyone else just, and the Saints probably would be the worst, I guess. And you hope the Panthers aren't in that conversation again. You hope, it's tough because when you started saying that just made me get a little panicky thinking about Bryce. And I'm like, I wonder if his first year was actually like a year zero. And then this year was more like what we expected out of his rookie year. And then we're going to get into, I guess I just get a little paranoid at times because like we know what we saw before, and you're like, wait, what if that comes back? Like, oh no. So I don't know. It's like he's the rookie of the year kid from the movie where like he gets like the magic baseball arm or whatever, and then all of a sudden it goes away, and you're like, oh no, like, and you can't get it back. And I hope that's not what happens, but it does make me a little paranoid on that front, not for any rational reasons.
That's why he'll get knocked down. He'll take off his glove and see that it was his mother that was the star quarterback the whole time.
Oh, that's right.